everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I want to remind everybody, hit the like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody that wants to share some love. All is appreciated. And of course, I may or may not do an open panel. Determines how this goes. I had some guests that were supposed to show up, and somehow not a one of them has showed up. And it's just maybe they're all running behind. Don't know. Maybe they just don't have their heart in this. So we'll find out. In the meantime, I've got some information I wanted to present and have those other people on the panel to go over this stuff with me. They seem to have people that have good minds and different aspects and deal with various different processes in this governmental instrumentality system. So I was thinking maybe we could have some different perceptions and perspectives brought out about my concept of what we're supposed to be doing here. But evidently, I guess, again, maybe they're not interested as much as they said they were. So we'll find out. In the meantime, let's get into it. Because the first thing I want to bring up is reconciliation through dialect. Reconciliation through dialect involves using language, particularly dialects, to bridge divides and foster understanding between different groups. Now, I've spoken on this before as it relates to the concise English and the common parlance that the general common man of the community uses, as opposed to the various different grammar styles throughout the various different jurisdictions, both in the legal and commercial worlds. This is the English language that is known as a vehicular language, bringing two diverse groups of people together in common unity through the language itself. So here we have particular dialects to bridge divides, which is what the English language is itself. It's supposed to be used to bridge a divide between two different cultures that speak different languages. And this can be achieved through language revitalization efforts, promoting language learning, and acknowledging the historical and cultural significance of the dialects. And this is what I'm bringing forth in regards to correction of the records and stuff as we speak about that estate and everything else. And greetings, brother, you say. How you doing today?
Oh.
Oops. He'll be back. He'll be back. This is one of those great minds I was talking about. He's come about this same kind of process, pretty much identical that I've been speaking about. If you remember, I did a 43 video series on reconciling the master trust account. And in that, we discussed the online Postal One account. And then I also discussed the the enterprise payment system account, where you're assigned a CRID and a MID for the account as a international merchant. And you'll also remember I spoke of data elements under 19 CFR 149.3, wherein it speaks about a widely recognized commercially identifiable number used in lieu of the name and address. And so it's my thinking that when you set up these accounts, you don't use the name and address anymore. You start using the account numbers and you start connecting the accounts by a routing, by a holder in due course. The registered agent, already known as the registered agent for Service of Process, which is the United States Postal Service or Post Office. Greetings, brother. How you doing today?
Doing good. Sorry about that earlier. I hit the wrong button and it closed it on me, so I had to start it back up.
That's all right. So I'm just going through, and I was telling about reconciliation through dialect, how it correlates with the concise English that the common parlance man is supposed to know, but doesn't, and then gets involved in this legal and commercial society where they think they know English and they don't, and then they're looking at these terms and conditions in these different jurisdictions, thinking it's English when it's a different grammar style. And this is the part that reminds me of King James Version of the Bible, Jeremiah 51:31. One post shall run to meet another, messenger to messenger, to shew unto the king of Babylon that the city has fallen at the other end. And so we're supposed to have a matter of language etiquette. This is the diploma, the diplomacy, the diplomatic etiquette in how we address each other, which we were supposed to know by the time we graduated high school and got the high school diploma. However, we didn't, and we were confused in both English and in persons. We didn't know thyself. And so there were certain things that we entered into the record that we shouldn't have, just like our mom and dads did. And so we have to correct the record, but in order to correct the record, we must recognize the errors. And the errors relate to the grammar styles and the languages throughout the different jurisdictions, and our misinterpretation and miscomprehension or non-comprehension. We have to recognize our own mistakes. This is the Father's prayer, the Lord's prayer, coming forth with repentance and forgiveness. Okay? So as we're talking about these languages, and we'll get into that here in a minute. So as we're talking about these languages, it says, language revitalization, right? Revitalizing indigenous languages, for example, can help build pride in identity and strengthen community ties. It also makes visible languages and cultures that have been historically marginalized. Okay? Language learning. Learning another language can foster empathy and understanding, undermining the exclusivism of traditional perspectives. In other words, being excluded from legal and commercial venues of being able to appropriately come forth with remedies is because you don't have the understanding that they're using different grammar styles, and that's what is undermining you being included. This is the problem with all this thing. I keep telling everybody it's all upside down and backwards. This diversity, equity, inclusion is not what you think it is. It is not working for you. It is working against you. Dialects as a medium. This is where I was speaking about the English language being a vehicular language as the medium between two different cultures that brings them together in a uniform language known as English. This is why they're trying to put it forth throughout the world. And it says, in some cases, dialects have been used as a tool for reconciliation, even in the face of dominance by a standard language. So again, this is why I'm telling us we need to get back to concise English and use it in the face of the dominant languages, the legal and commercial grammar styles, as a tool for the reconciliation, because it is the vehicular language. And this is according to Cambridge University Press and Assessment. A great resource. For example, in Greater China, reconciliation is being negotiated through Southern Chinese dialects like Cantonese, Min, and Hakka, rather than the standard Mandarin. Okay, this is like, rather than using the standard legal or commercial grammar styles, you need to go back to the common English, the concise English, your root language. Language and identity. I speak about the identity in scriptures, the I am, forever. That's what we're supposed to be calling it, forever. Not a him or a he or a she or a her or a God. It's the I am. Shared language can be a unifying symbol, facilitating communication and generating feelings. Excuse me, of solidarity, according to Sage journals, And this can be particularly important in post-conflict situations. So post-conflict, that's after the war, that's during peace, or pre-conflict situations, either way, where shared language can help repair trust and friendship. Okay? And as I mentioned, language and identity, and rather than being a matter of conflict, but in solidarity, in other words, in peace, we're going to be speaking about the amnesty oath. Isn't that what reconciliation is? Is coming to peace. So you need a peace treaty, an oath of peace. Example, reconciliation Regina. This, which means queen. Regina means queen. Reginald means king, feminine and masculine, ruler. This organization in Canada is committed to revitalizing Indigenous, the kings and queens, languages lost due to residential schools. They call them residential schools, and offers language learning programs for the public, according to Reconciliation Regina. What do you got to say about that, brother? You spoke to me about the amnesty oath and how important it is, and that's something I've spoken about as it relates to the Lieber Code, Article 139. You have to give notice to the officers first before they have to take notice. They're not supposed to just presume it.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to touch on the other part there where you said they're residency schools. So they're schools that teach you nothing so that you don't know how to do business. You don't have any
Right.
clue how that when you get out of there, like you said, you have this diploma, but really this diploma is only an indicator of how, you know, how indoctrinated you've become.
Yep.
And not to know
Absolutely.
how to do business correctly, but to do, just the bare minimum of whatever it is your level of competency can, withstand. And then they categorize you and they put you where they need you to be accordingly.
Yep. Absolutely. And we've got Chief Grey Wolf, Administrator, otherwise known as Brother Melvin Washington. How you doing, brother?
I'm all right. Can y'all hear me?
We got you loud and clear, 5x5.
Yep, I hear you. What's going on with you, Melvin?
Not much, man. Just studying. That's it, bro. Just putting all of the right definitions in place. Just what I'm saying, make sure I'm saying the right things and make sure I ask for the right things so they'll know what I want.
Yep.
I understand that one.
And
Yeah,
and
man.
that's where I want to hopefully express to everybody that we need to go to the proper party when we're doing this. And hopefully here shortly, again, another thing I'll be talking about is presenting it to the proper party through the proper process.
Correct.
And that is the expenses incidental to transfer of title. That's the only real thing that needs to be done. That birth certificate is evidence as well as the selective service, and they are both evidence of your authority existing outside of the federal government and state sovereignty, which is where they get their sovereignty. Okay, so we'll be talking about all this stuff. And so here it says Jeremiah 51:31 in the King James Version of the Bible. One post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another. This is the Pony Express. This is the post office. And this is to shew the king of Babylon that his city is taken at the one end. So his city is taken at the one end means they're in conflict. There's a conflict, and somebody has overtaken the city. The king of Babylon, the city, is the city of lies, and the lies are falling. This is what it's saying metaphorically. It's a parable to shew the king of Babylon that the city has fallen at the other end, to shew the truth that the lies are falling. So one post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another. If we want to shew the truth of our studying unto God and being approved unto him, rightly dividing the word of truth, then we have to post it. Okay? and we have to post it with another post. When you come to terms of peace, one side sends a messenger to the other side's messenger, and one messenger comes to meet the other messenger, and they both go back to their posts.
And they have
Okay?
fulfilled their post duty.
Correct. Now, does that sound like the prodigal son, the parable of the prodigal son?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that sound like the prodigal son was under an indentured servitude, and then when he fulfilled that, he retired and regained his estate?
What it sounds like to me.
So if we
Yeah.
look at the selective service and we retire from selective service, gentlemen, ladies, they do the same thing, but it's not through selective service. It's through the birth registration, where in the maiden name is the informant.
Right.
So we have the ethereal legacy estate of the Father and his service to the one Father which art in heaven, and we have the material estate of the mother and her dowry as it is to the material inheritance. Okay? So we're going to retire as agent of service of process, because there is already a registered agent of service of process known as the United States Postal Service as the registered agent for the post office, who is the trademark holder. Principal agent is already established on the international level as a international global trust. So we have the freedom of transit at the international level. We have the liberty at the constitutional level of the United States to travel. We have the right under a civil contract to maintain that liberty. If we have that, we have put limitations on our freedom. You have inherent freedoms as your free will. You have liberties that are undertaken by obligations of the Constitution. And then you have rights of civil authority under a contract as an agent for public service, which is a public trust. One way or another, you are a principal, agent, or beneficiary. You get to choose when and how and what. If you want that ID for civil contracting, you can. But equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation, so you damn well better come with clean hands. Hey, to be honest with you, for the state ID, I am not a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary, so it is not to be used for residential purposes, but rather as private credential evidence.
Preach it.
It is merely used for evidence, just like the selective service, birth certificate, and Social Security are not to be used for identification. It is only evidence, and it is evidence of one's capacity. What do you think on this, brother?
Can I add something to this here, to this picture you have on the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So you need to put your P.O. boxes, your address. Okay?
Right.
And then you put...
I'll send this in as an amended form.
No, Keith. No, listen. Don't get ahead of me, okay?
It
You
says
can do
right
it.
on it.
Listen to what I'm saying to you. Stop. Let me finish. You can change it online, Keith. Okay? You can change the address online, and it says if it's nothing other than an address change, it's not required that you send the form in. But I'm trying to get to it.
That.
Okay, but I'm trying to get to this other point here, this last point, and I will yield, okay? When you change the address on there, it's going to be your P.O. box, and your zip code is going to be 9999, and then those last digits that we talked about that are assigned to your P.O. box.
Correct. Now, you can do that digitally, but I assure you, I want a definitive paper form. So when I use a definitive paper form and I use the actual, excuse me, when I use the actual registered agent for service of process already, it is his fiduciary duty already to take the definitive paper form and make sure that it is entered digitally in the accurate manner. That's his job. I don't want to do anything online if I don't have to.
Okay, so let's go over this for a second here, and let's try to decide on which option is the best here, because you just made me kind of think of something. So, do you think that it would be in our best interest, because no, that's the principal, not the agent. So the principal would be at the P.O. box. So that's correct. I was thinking maybe to put it at the physical address and then make it the 998 for the postmaster. But no, because that's the principal. So that needs to be at the P.O. box, and then it needs to be established in the minor outlining islands along with the last four digits that are attached to it. And you're correct about sending it in. But what I'm saying to you is that you're going to change it before you send it in, because you want to change it with that
Right.
address and you want to sign
Yes.
it. Now, how are you going to sign it?
Well, and that's what they tell you. You tear off this top part and you
Now, if you
put the
don't tear
correct.
it off, it's a bond. You keep it intact. You don't tear it off. You send the whole thing in when you print one up and you send it to them. Then you can print one up for yourself and tear it off at the bottom, because it's a bond.
Yeah, in other words, the bottom portion is a coupon and the top portion is the security. It's just like a bill.
Yes. And what I'm telling you, okay, please keep this letter or wallet-sized acknowledgement card as legal proof of your registration. This is your acknowledgement card at the bottom. You keep this. This is your record of the old address. Okay? You're going to tear that off. You're going to send this top part in with your correct address information here, your signature and thumbprint and date. Okay? Now, they're going to have that on record. They're going to issue a new registration. Now you have matching records showing that you did your diligent part in amending the record as physical evidence, even without a signature, because you maintained the original portion of the card that was in error. This is evidence. Do you understand? This is evidence. Was there a transfer made? It shows right here there was a transfer made to 1703 Rainbow in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Is that transfer valid? It's a residential address. How can it be valid? You understand the importance of that P.O. box now? You said it's a
Yeah.
business. You said it's a business address. 1703 Rainbow is a business address too, but they're different capacities. This is Keith Orland Little as an agent of a street name security that was securitized in an agreement with the municipality that named the street and the number that it was bonded under. This is the expression of the trust for that bond. It is not city, state, and United States. It is city, state, and postal property. The zip code. Is there a valid agreement with 1703 Rainbow expressing Keith Orland Little as the executive. No, it shows him as the agent under assignment, liable, surety. That is not the case. This is evidence of why you needed the correction. Date of birth, 8/20/1966. That is false. The date of birth is the date it was filed.
Yeah.
We got everybody on board still?
Yeah, I'm on board.
We lost
So
you.
basically, that makes your real birth to what when you came out of the womb private, and it basically saying that hey, it was really established and registered on that day. So my birthday would really be December the 7th.
Right. The day I was born. The day I was discharged of my mother's waters as a man and took my first breath of life, breathed into my nostrils by the breath of God. That man became a living soul. Okay, the man is the record. It shows a distinct separation. You can continue on with that record, but the record has to reflect accurately. But because the record was entered into an error, the prenatal record of mom established a noun before the adjective. The man came into existence pursuant to a record that didn't even have a name. It exists as baby boy Little at the hospital.
So basically, we going about the date defined by FINRA and fencing.
Yeah, the file date. The day I was born was August 20th. And I think on my birth certificate, it actually says birth date is August 20th, but that's only because I was adopted. And yeah, Kodesh Yisra, your device says not connected. You have to go out and come back in. It's not even given a circle or anything. It just says device is not connected. But see, that birth certificate is just merely evidence of the establishment of an estate created by the state and given a legal representation, a legal name. And they got the data elements from mom to do so, but mom was never paid. They got patent information that they were supposed to pay mom for the use and conversion thereof, for their investment in a legal fiction known as a United States business for income tax purposes under residency in the state. Born in a spell of illness, too, folks. So let's take a look at the next one. Hopefully our brother Israel will make it back, because the next one in relations to that amnesty oath still says device is not connected. So I'm going to kick him. Maybe he's not even hearing me. Okay, and he'll be forced to come back in then. Hopefully he can make it back in, because he's got some good information, particularly this, because this is the binding element. See, when the forefathers came forth out of Europe and established this, quote, great nation called America, they had some founding documentation. And it was basically letting the world know who they were. It was an identification. And in that identification, they stated their piece. And in that piece, they gave certain definitions and used a certain language. And this is what we're talking about today. People don't understand the language. You come out, you graduate high school, and you get a diploma saying that you've learned diplomatic etiquette in how we address each other, but nobody's actually learned how to address each other. because they've been indoctrinated into giving a legal name with a street name securitized and then expressed in a trust of a city, state, and postal zip. And everybody wants to go to the United States for a correction. I don't think they're the holder in due course. The holder in due course is the one that has the right to enforce the instruments. That sounds like me, or to me, that the registered agent is the one that's able to enforce it because he's the one that's bound by law, so he gets to use the law for its enforcement.
So that would actually, to me, that sounds like the attorneys for the Board of Health and Attorney General.
No, that's the Postal Service. Check it out. Okay. Judicial. Who are we? Judicial officer. Okay. The Judicial Officer Department is a neutral, independent forum. Does that sound like equity? Is equity a neutral and independent forum? And it says it's within the United States Postal Service, consisting of the Judicial Officer, the Office of Administrative Law Judges, and the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. If equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation, and Carpenter, it says your device is not connected. And Yakodesh Yizra Adama, yes, you are connected. And if you just unmute, we can't hear you. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick Ann Carpenter, and hopefully she'll kick the same idea. You have to come back in, try again. Says your device is not connected. And so equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. And if they're already the registered agent, then why not put the obligation where it belongs? And that's the recognition. That's the recognition. The recognition is a recognition. That is a salvage operation. Where
so wait a minute, these are the attorneys for the actual addresses, basically, in a sense.
Right. They're the
okay.
The street name is a creature of the municipality. The municipality, through postal roads, Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 14, 17. Wait a minute. No. 7, postal roads. The address is then securitized by the Postal Service with an agreement with the municipality, and it's got its own bond number. That address, that's a bond number. It proves a contract with the Postal Service and the municipality, and it's recognized in trust. Municipality is the beneficiary city. State is the agent, and the zip code. They're the principal, not the United States. Does that make sense? And welcome, Steve.
Hey, what's good? Sorry I'm late.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So let's go back to the American Presidency Project and Proclamation 179. Okay. This is Andrew Johnson. This is after President Lincoln and the Civil War. And it was granting full pardon and amnesty for the offense of treason against the United States during the late Civil War. And this is what we're going to do. In essence, we're not going to commit to the offense of treason, but we are going to commit inequity to mutual mistake. And we ask for, we repent and we ask for forgiveness equally as we forgive our brothers for their debts. the mutuality of the mistake and come forth in peace. That's it. And it says, whereas the President of the United States has heretofore set for several proclamations offering amnesty and pardon to persons who had been or were concerned in the late rebellion against the lawful authority of the government of the United States, which proclamations were severally issued on the 8th day of December, 1863, on the 26th day of March, 1864, on the 29th day of May, 1865, on the 7th day of September, 1867, and the 4th day of July in the present year, 1869, I believe. And whereas the authority of the federal government, having been reestablished in all the states and territories within the jurisdiction of the United States, it is believed that such prudential reservations and exceptions as at the dates of said several proclamations were deemed necessary and proper may now be wisely and justly relinquished, and that an universal amnesty and pardon for participation in said rebellion extended to all who have been born any part therein will tend to secure permanent peace, order, and prosperity throughout the land.
Okay, because I was looking at where you were reading it because you still got the judicial officers on the screen. Okay, can you post that in the chat?
My apologies. I just forgot to flip the screen. There we go. This is Proclamation 179. Thank you for that, brother.
Okay. Proclamation 179.
Yep. And you guys can look all this information up that I'm showing you. Look up the information. You just go to the Selective Service site, and it'll give you information to follow to get your Selective Service record. Jeremiah 51:31, and all the stuff that I've said about language and how English is vehicular and stuff. It's all stuff you can research. And again, this is to help iterate that I don't want you believing anything I say, anything the neighbor says, anything the government says. And for crying out loud, don't believe what your mother says. Do your research so you know. We got to stop believing shit. And it goes on to say, and to renew and fully restore confidence and fraternal feeling among the whole people, because that's what's being destroyed. Not just our confidence and fraternal feeling with the government, but with our fellow man. We're at arms with our fellow man because of this stuff. We've become a society of Babylon, lying to each other and willing to put up with those lies, little lies even. And their respect for and attachment to national government, designed by its patriotic founders for the general good. It's to bring us together, not to divide us. Now, therefore, be it known that I, Andrew Johnson, President of the United States, by virtue of the power and authority in me vested by the Constitution, and in the name of the sovereign people of the United States, do hereby proclaim and declare, unconditionally and without reservation, to all and to every person who directly or indirectly participated in the late insurrection or rebellion, a full pardon and amnesty for the offense of treason against the United States or of adhering to their enemies during the late Civil War, with restoration of all rights, privileges, and immunities under the Constitution and the laws which have been made in pursuance thereof. So I don't know what my brother Yusei would say, but mine would be the Lord's Prayer. Go ahead.
So I got a question. So when we can basically adopt that proclamation and simply on conditions that we came in error and we wasn't competent enough to actually set our own terms and conditions.
Okay, but can you understand that I just correlated this proclamation with the Lord's Prayer?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And understand, people, understand how to pray this way. Praying this way means to use the similar connotation. You don't have to use the Lord's Prayer verbatim. You speak it in your own words. You convey it in the way you comprehend it. And the way I comprehend it is there's but one Father which art in heaven, and that we're supposed to do below as he wants us to do above. If we were in his house, his wonderful kingdom, we should do that here. Even though this is not the kingdom of God as most people perceive, the scripture says the kingdom of God spread across the earth. So therefore it is. And the only way it spreads across that earth is if we treat it like God's house. I did a video on this years back about how could you say I'm homeless? This is the home God gave us. This is our house. This is what we're supposed to steward. This is what we're supposed to be agents of. Not an agent of a service of process. He's no respecter of persons. So we act as stewards, the living soul. You guys understand that that easement protected by the Postal Service around every address block? You understand that's a conservation easement. Conservation easement wherein the commercial purpose is used on that block, plot, parcel, segment, whatever, however it's divided, and it shows that conservation easement. They literally have to condemn the land of its natural use so they can pave over it and prevent living creatures from living on it because they're going to use it for commercial purposes. Leviticus 25, verse 25 or 23 and 24 says, "The land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all of the lands of your possession ye shall grant a redemption to the land." So the most inherent question I would ask is, who gives anybody the right to condemn his land, which shall not be sold? If it can't be sold because it's his, who are you to condemn it? And if you condemned it for commercial purposes and intend that I can only live in this house as a matter of commercial purposes, I beg to differ. I redeem the land within this conservation easement for its intended natural purposes as a matter of necessity of life, as a man is defined as an animal under your very own U.S. code. And that conservation easement protects wildlife and fisheries.
Yeah, now I get where that Bible verse come from, and Jesus' symbol is an actual fish.
And it's a protection order. Full faith and credit is given to protection orders. The protection order already exists, just like so many other things already exist. The Postal Trust already exists. All you have to do is step in as the benefactor who gives to the beneficiary. They are holding the beneficiary, which is the record, once you transfer that title to them. And now they recognize you as the one that is granting and gifting things to the beneficiary. That beneficiary is connected to the general ledger because it is a creature of the general ledger under a double entry ledgering system, and they are the registered agent required under the reconciliation of master trust account to reconcile the general ledger within 3 days. Does that sound like contract terms and conditions, everybody? You have 3 days to respond.
Yeah.
One post shall run to meet another, messenger to messenger, shewing unto the king of Babylon that the city is fallen at the other end. The lies are falling. I'm here to tell you the truth. The messenger, and in the past, has been messaging a false message. My apologies. I didn't know what I was doing. That's all we're doing. Merely a correction of the records. Now, our brother Yisei also, and welcome, I am Seth, 888. Greetings, brother. And so our brother Yisei showed me a form, Bureau of Fiscal Services Form 231, which I've got to point out. I thought it was the same form that I had. This is called a general power of attorney by individual for the collection of certain checks drawn on the United States Treasury. Okay, and this would be in accordance to all those bills and everything with that coupon on the bottom. It's relative to drawing checks on the Treasury because of that coupon. Okay, but notice there's no OMB number on this one. Okay,
So
and
like,
we're not so much worried about checks drawn. The only time we would need checks drawn is if we needed cash. And in a credit system, there's really no need for cash if you are already operating in the credit system. Like I said, it's a matter of holder in due course, which is the service of process provider, which is a registered agent known as United States Postal Service. And folks, they operate as an automated clearinghouse for the data elements. So once the record is corrected, and they're the ones responsible, again, for reconciling the master trust account with the general ledger. If there's an error that pops up, they're required to take notice of it and then correct it within 3 days. That's their job already. And it's all tied, it's all tied to the general ledger. But notice this one doesn't have the OMB number. Go ahead and say that again, brother.
yeah, cause see, when I was researching, it said the Bureau of Fiscal Service is the official holder of the ledger for the United States, but it could be wrong.
Correct. They're the holder of the ledger, and they have a contract with the Postal Service, and it's because it's the Postal Service that has the Judicial Officer Department.
Right.
That's the financial department. Understand, judicial has to do with monetary legislations, monetary value systems.
Now, when I hear monetary legislations, that basically sounds like indirect mortgage terms until an officer pledges it to a policy, pledges a claim with an invoice to secure a policy to establish a reserve. When I hear legislation, okay,
correct, and that's what we're doing when we if I want to do the expenses incidental to transfer of title and run that title up the chain to the Postal Service, guess what? Understand again the importance of 19 CFR. Let me pull it up real quick. 19 CFR 149.3. And notice it says data elements, okay? This is customs duties. Who are we but customers? The ones that customize things, okay? Customs duties and Customs and Border Protection, Department of Homeland Security, Department of the Treasury, Importer Security Filing data elements. Seller, buyer, and ship to party all use the same language. A widely recognized, commercially accepted identification number for this party may be provided in lieu of the name and address.
Hold on, what?
The buyer, the seller, and the ship to party. A widely recognized, commercially accepted identification number for this party may be provided in lieu of the name and address. Now, if I have an enterprise payment system account with the post office, recognizing me as an international merchant with a customer registration ID and a merchant ID, can I use those numbers in lieu of the name and address as that commercially accepted identification number that is widely recognized around the world? What do they ask you when you go to customs, folks?
Passport.
Do you have anything to declare?
Oh, I ain't never been to customs. I'm thinking of TSA.
So, at the customs border, you make a declaration by using data elements.
It has to be the birth certificate.
No, by using data elements in any form. Yeah, you can use the birth certificate, but the birth certificate has data elements on it already that are evidence of what? The error. The error is the name and address. We don't want to use the name and address. We want to use the number because it protects the name and address by what? Keeping the name and address private. So when you send mail to somebody that has a physical address like the Department of State at 125 Main Street, Des Moines, Iowa, 50619 or whatever it is, how do you address it for yourself? Do you still put your name and address on it? Or do you start using a widely recognized, commercially identifiable number? And then when the mailman asks you, well, that doesn't have an address on it. Yeah, it does. And that's your CRID number. It's part of your mailing system. All you have to do is take it back with you. It's got a forward address where you're supposed to take it to. But if it comes back to you, you take it to your system, you enter the CRID number, and you find out the physical address that is already separated from me as a verifiable delivery address where you are already assigned as the agent for service of process, and I am not in receivership.
That's what Robert Tanner was telling me, that the driver's license made us a registered receiver with the
with the state
registered receiver, yeah, with the
right
state.
on state business at the pleasure of the governor. Look in your constitution and ask it what or who is the chief magistrate, and it will take you to the constitutional section in your constitution, your state constitution, and it will tell you chief magistrate is the governor.
Wait, what?
Yeah, look it up. Let's pull it up. Let's see here, Mississippi Constitution. Okay, Constitution of the State of Mississippi, 193 pages. Up where we go to find. Hit find, and we find magistrate. Oh, it's not even going to mention magistrate. Oh, wow.
Yes, we still on the Jim Crow, so it's totally different. They didn't abolish slavery until 2013. So a lot of our stuff is still old time.
Okay, let's do another state. We'll do Iowa to show you. Constitution under the Iowa legislature. Let's go to the other one. Go to find. Look at that. Article 4, Executive Department. Let me blow this up for everybody. Article 4, Executive Department, under Amendment 38, Governor. Section 1, the supreme executive power of this state shall be vested in a chief magistrate who shall be styled the governor of the state of Iowa. Now, understand, this is still the same in every other state because it's the same what? Form of government.
Wow. Say, I
Okay,
wonder what mine says.
so going
Can we
back
go back
to,
to mine and see what's up with the Mississippi? See what it says.
well, we can, but let's not do that now. I want to get on with this
All right.
process because understand, folks, we've been indoctrinated into learning how to write the legal name, which is the first and last name, not the given name with the family name in either construct, first, last, or last, first, with the proper grammar, punctuation style for concise English. None of us have ever been taught that. We've always been indoctrinated through the public education system, the legal style of grammar, even though we didn't know it. And it fluctuates and changes. Now, here, this is the other one. This is durable power of attorney for securities and savings bonds transactions. And remember, I was telling you how the data elements, that's the customs title, the Postal Service is operating as a registered agent as a customs broker. Okay, they're the ACH.
Can you say that one more time, real slow?
The United States Postal Service is the registered agent already known and is a customs broker. They're the ones with the ACH, the data ACH, the data automated clearinghouse for the data elements. So if the data elements are in error, it's in error with the records below, and the upper record has no idea about it. It's not going to get connected with the general ledger until the death certificate hits. Then they will correct everything with the general ledger within 3 days. Not during your lifetime. So this one here is durable power of attorney for securities and savings bonds, appointing, and then the grantor, yourself, hereby appoint name of attorney in fact, and that's the Keith Orland Little. Keith, I, Keith, hereby appoint Keith Orland Little as my attorney in fact. In addition to one or both of the above, I authorize my attorney in fact to make gifts to others. I further authorize my attorney in fact to make transfers to the attorney in fact. That statement right there allows us to turn around and do another durable power of attorney. I, Keith, hereby appoint postmaster so-and-so at the local post office as my attorney in fact for any records I give him. And those records are with a CRID number. So if you want my address, mail it to this CRID number. It'll go to the post office. The post office will look up the CRID number, and it'll find out what P.O. box to put it in. And I will go down periodically and pick up any mail in my P.O. box. Otherwise, they would just automatically clear the data elements if need be. Same with the county registrar and the Health and Human Services. See, the Health and Human Services is that state's vital statistics jurisdiction that we're looking at here. Remember this one, Melvin?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this is what shows us that the Health and Human Services establishes through the state a state vital records jurisdiction. That's the beneficiary record. That's where all liabilities and obligations lay. Okay? And they are the ones that created the financial structure and use it for their financial transactions. This is evidence that shows how it is used, that it is in fact monetized. Look, do not let anybody try to misconstrue that this is not a monetization. They're showing you where and how it is monetized. It says birth certificate sale. Did you or did you not have to buy the birth certificate from the state? Are you the only one that can buy it? Are you the only presumed agent of process? No, there are many. But guess what, folks? Nobody but yourself can perfect the title in that name. John Smith cannot perfect the title in Keith Little. It cannot happen. Does that make sense? Any questions? Any input? Okay, so
I
let's
think,
go. Go ahead.
yeah, I think I get it. I think I get it to its entirety. Because, see, the Office of Management and Budget, it basically earmarks all of the funds for all of the agencies across the board. So
Right.
this means every agency gets a portion of each birth certificate just in case you may need services. They already have a reserve. They already have items to tap into the reserve once they cash that form once you sign.
Yeah,
So
and see, when we grow up and we're indoctrinated to use the legal name and the address, and then at the age of 18, understand again, folks, you got a high school diploma saying that you were educated with diplomatic etiquette in how to address each other. But that, in fact, is not what happened. You were indoctrinated again into legal name and address, where again you're allowed to use a number in lieu of the name and address, and nobody ever taught you that process. Why? Because they don't want you using that process. It's much easier to be able to allow for you to establish all those records through the state by using a name and address for your medical records. As soon as you turn 18, you go get an ID. And what do? You use an address to get the ID along with a social security card and a birth record that says it's not for identification. So what are you using for the identification? You're addressing yourself. You're using the address as identification.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind is, and I just absolutely love how Keith just goes all the way into it, to dot every I and cross every T and bring all the stuff to the table. The long and short of it is the state and federal government hijack your name and make you do everything under their jurisdiction, release it, taking all of your power from you so that they can manipulate and do with it as they please. And all they're doing is extracting fees, but they extract fees your entire life. And every single place that you give that social security number, they basically just go create a trust for you as a beneficiary, and then they pimp the shit out of you your whole life. And the long and short of it, that so your insurance policy, life insurance, health insurance, all of those policies, they're just tapping that number, and they're just tapping the estate. They're not. They're going to say, "Oh, we're going to hold $5 million for your car insurance, but it's going to cost you a monthly premium." Well, the premium goes to them. The insurance comes from you because you're the one that issued the credit, so that they can have a $5 million policy that exists on your behalf. They're not digging in their pockets and having the money. All they do is create an administration, and their administration says how they access that account. And
Right.
they have to provide a service and a benefit for what they're doing, and then they just charge their fees.
Yep.
So the thing to understand is create your own administration, and you can do the same thing.
Yep. And that's what I was explaining about the enterprise payment system account as a merchant at the international level, where you use the CRID as your ID now. You now created your own ID, a new ID. And this is relative to what about the Tower of Babel, King Cosmic says. This is what happened when they gave the people separate languages. And Abraham made a covenant with God to be king. and said he will make every man buy his freedom. So yes, today you have to buy the birth certificate, like I said. But in that, it again goes back to the prodigal son. So let me show you something here as it relates to the prodigal son, and that expense is incidental to transfer of title to the various different ways. Here we have Title 49, which is transportation. Now, if you understand transportation, under the Transportation Code, there's a definition of commerce. And that definition of commerce is commerce means traffic, trade, or transportation. And then it goes on, there's another one that speaks the exact same language, and it says within the United States. And so you can look at those and find out that transportation actually means commerce. Okay, so Office of the Secretary of Transportation, uniform relocation assistance and real property acquisition for federal and federally assisted programs. Real property acquisition. What is a real property acquisition? Real property acquisition is anything that was acquisitioned as real property. Well, what is real property? Well, real property is the rights and interests that are real in one's enjoyment in the possession and use of a thing for their benefit. So it's a natural possession. And it says expenses incidental to transfer of title to agency. Now, what we're going to do is, because we got that state ID under the Department of Transportation, understand? Under Department of Transportation. Under the Department of Transportation, we got a state ID or a driver's license. And we transferred a title. We transferred a title from the Health and Human Services by getting a birth certificate and Social Security card, going to the Department of Transportation and handing them the title documents. We do the same thing when we give that name and address, where they can collectively look up the information under that birth registration, under the vital statistics jurisdiction, all those different government agencies, public education, the military, the school, the IRS, everybody has access to those records as an agent for service of process. Okay? The owner of the real property shall be reimbursed for all reasonable expenses the owner necessarily incurred. 4. Recording fees, transfer taxes, documentary stamps, evidence of title. Boundary surveys. That's that conservation easement, and the military survey. Military survey. Legal descriptions of the real property. Now, most people think this is in relation to real estate, where they give you lots, blocks, parcels, and all that. No, the legal description is the legal name. The legal name used to acquire all real property. You can't acquire property without a legal name. And similar expenses incidental to conveying the real property to the agency.
Now, when they say agency, what agency are they specifically talking about?
Whatever agency is using that data element, the real property data elements that you gave them, which is an incident conveying the real property, the data elements, whatever agency.
Well, the data elements is anything that we pretty much give them, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what's interesting?
In every situation, it's a name and address, not a number, in lieu of the name and address. Real quick here. However, the agency is not required to pay costs solely required to perfect the owner's title. It's telling you right there. You got to transfer the title to perfect it.
True.
Okay.
Well,
The
there
next,
was the Unified Budget Act back in the, what, 30s, I think, or something? And then it
yeah,
said in there in the investment rules governing that, where is it? The Treasury to invest such portions of the amount credited to the account as is not, in his judgment, required to meet current withdrawals. Such investments must be made only in interest-bearing obligations of the United States or in obligations guaranteed as to both principal and interest by the
yes,
United States. See
yes,
Title II, Section 201,
and C Title 18
1935.
U.S. and C Title 18 U.S.C. 8 obligations and other securities of the United States. You'll notice you can read all of through that, and there's one particular little part that says between commas, and there's no uppercase lettering. It's all lowercase, concise English, and it says under obligations and other securities of the United States, stamps and other representatives of value. Okay? So now we see expenses incidental to transfer of title to the United States. So what we're
What was
doing
you just reading from?
see what?
What was you just reading from? All I see is Title 42's Petition Code 4653. I don't see no words after that though.
No, that's I was just stating.
Oh,
Yeah, I wasn't reading from anything directly there. But here we have again, you know, we took the ID after we graduated high school, and then we started out going out and started creating all these other accounts, bank accounts, medical accounts, automotive accounts, automobile dealership accounts, maintenance accounts, you know, with the local repairman and this and that, all these different accounts throughout our community. Okay, we use that identification to do so, using the name and address under a state identification on state business at the pleasure of the governor. As an employee, using a social security number, a Medicare qualified government employee known as a resident, federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. It was never deemed necessary. It was all volunteered. Equity does not aid a volunteer. So we have to learn expenses incidental to transfer of title to the United States, and that if there is an expense to me, it's incidental to the transfer of title to the United States, and it is in fact a representative of value.
I agree. The thing that I have a hard time with is how all of this went into the government's hands in 83 when the banking commissioner and the chairman of the Board of Regents of Eastern Kentucky University writes the script.
We're not
That
worried.
man was killed
Russ,
in 83, and then it went to the office of the comptroller of the currency when it was a private entity before, and
right,
it was held by a Combs.
right, and we're not gonna we don't want to get into all that right now. We're just trying to explain a process, and that's it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so when we see the expenses incidental to the transfer of title to the agency, that's from the Department of Transportation because we use that ID to establish all those accounts. So we're gonna give a directive to all those people that hold all those accounts to give them back to the Health and Human Services. Okay, so that they can collect back up the estate matters, all of them. Then we transfer that title to the United States for their settlement. Okay, to settle all the accounts. This is a salvation process. The prodigal son returns home and regains his estate by salvaging it and resurrecting it in a new name. The new name is an enumeration to keep the name and address private. Keep my name out your mouth. So we see 42 is the Health and Human Services. That's the record that was established through that state's vital. So we're going to take all the transportation records and send them back to the agency, which is Social Security, Health and Human Services, and then from there they have expenses incidental to transfers of title to the United States. That's the directive for them to take all those records, send them to the United States. Who? Russ? Comptroller General.
Comptroller General.
Bureau of Fiscal Services. The registered agent. Okay? The head of a federal agency as soon as practical after the date of payment of the purchase price or the date of deposit in court of funds to satisfy the award of compensation in a condemnation proceeding to acquire real property. You have to either condemn the owner of his use for you to acquire it, and this is a requisition. You must first require the possession of it in order to do so. This is the Fifth Amendment takings clause. Whichever is the earlier shall reimburse the owner to the extent the head of such agency deems fair and reasonable for expenses he necessarily incurred for recording fees, transfer taxes, and similar expenses incidental to conveying such real property to the United States. The next one, Postal Service. Relocation assistance or real property acquisition policies. Wait a minute. Uniform under Title 49, Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition. Title 39, Relocation. Sounds like the Transportation Department or Department of Transportation has an agreement with the United States Postal Service, probably under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7, Postal Roads. Right? Anybody disagree?
No, not to what it currently is today. No, I don't disagree with that. I don't agree that that's the way it should be, but
that's the way it is, and that's the way it's outlined. We can agree to that, yes.
Right, but I think what ought be done shall be done. There's nothing new under the sun, and there's a bunch of men and women running these places.
Well, it's a postal road, and we just have to assert our equal station in life to use the postal road in the same manner, without need for licensure, and without need for plates, without need for registration, without need for insurance, merely asserting our international freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. The Union being a labor union, the Postal Union. And I have a contract with them through an enterprise payment system as a merchant, able to equal consideration and equal benefit of those very same postal roads. See, that's not, you don't assert your right to travel because you're failing to, you only have the right to travel when you're at liberty, on leave from the duty implied under the Constitution. If you have no duty implied under the Constitution, then you don't have that liberty. You have something greater. And if you're subjecting yourself to the civil contract as an operator or a motor carrier driver, motor vehicle driver, something like that, a common carrier even, you're involved in an implied contract that you're probably not even really qualified for, and therefore would be unconscious. But you're so unconscious you don't know how to get out of it. Expenses incidental to transfer the title to the Postal Service. Reimbursement. When property is acquired through the exercise or the threat of the exercise of eminent domain.
I think
Anybody
that
know?
right there is where they flipped the table on all of us.
Well, that's where we flip the table on them. Again, understand Leviticus 25 verses 23 and 24. The land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. Freedom of transit. And in all the lands of your possession, ye shall grant a redemption to the land. In their eminent domain, as I said earlier, oops, we're not showing the right one, Postal Service. So when property is acquired, this is the Postal Service one under relocation assistance. When property is acquired through the exercise or the threat of the exercise of eminent domain, property. What happened to real property? When property, okay, so now we're talking property. You mean like my car? Through the exercise of eminent domain. Yeah, eminent domain is that threat. Okay, and where were we talking about condemnation? The last one, 42 U.S. Code. The head of a federal agency, as soon as practicable, after the date of the payment of the purchase price or the date of deposit in court funds, to satisfy the award of compensation in a condemnation proceeding. So again, it's a salvation process because something's been condemned, whether it be the person or the property or you, however you want to perceive it. And again, the amnesty is the Lord's Prayer. I repent for my wrongdoings. Please forgive me. I believe it was mutual.
And
I
to
believe
build
it.
on what he's saying, when I was live today, I was reading, taking clause of the Constitution. That's one thing it said. Property that was under condemnation was entitled to fair compensation to the fair market value of whatever they took. So it's just ironic they use that, but it's also, in the trust corpus that they have to compensate for whatever they take. They just can't take it and not compensate you for what it's worth. Are you?
Yes, yes. Running, excuse me, Running Water says, the land quote, was that the Bible? Yes. King James Version, I'll drop it in chat. King James Version, Leviticus 25. Oops. King James Version, Leviticus 25, verses 23 through 25, actually. Read that 25th verse. That speaks of the same process of redemption to the land as to redeeming your brother who is waxen and poor and has sold off his belongings. If one of his kin come along to redeem him, his kin shall redeem his brother. So anyway, again, understand it's the relocation assistance and real property acquisition policies as it relates to the federal acquisitions that took your property or that you gave them. And it's under the Postal Service where we have reimbursement. Okay? Not the United States, not the Department of Transportation, not Social Security, Postal Service. And it says when property, very ambiguous, widely covers all property. When property, and then because it's not exclusive of anything, it includes all types. When property is acquired through the exercise or the threat of the exercise of eminent domain, the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine. Ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all the lands of your possession, ye shall grant a redemption to the land. So again, that conservation easement that is bound by the Postal Service's bonding number and the municipality's street name and the parcel built around it, along with its neighboring parcels, are the condemnation for commercial use. You have to remove the condemnation and redeem it for its necessity of life, returning it back to its natural use for your necessity of life, so that you can steward the land in your possession as directed by the one who owns the land. Does that make sense, guys?
You just clarified exactly what we were talking about earlier, just so you know.
Yeah, that's civilian authority. You retire that goddamn selective service and put it on the international side, showing that it's evidence of your civilian authority, and you return back home, prodigal son, taking back your estate. You are no longer indentured servitude.
Once you move it to international status, it's no longer taxable, and I know that because I was at an airport one time, and I tried to buy a pack of cigarettes. She was like, "Well, you flying domestic, we have to charge you double." I'm like, "What the fuck?" She was like, "Only international flights don't get taxed," and that's something I remember. So basically, they get free cigarettes, and me, I had to pay for it, and damn near, I had to buy a carton basically, and it was overpriced. I was pretty heated about it. So I know.
And what's that tell you about the tariffs? Remember all this talk about the tariffs? See,
We're all being undercut.
Well, you can operate as a merchant without being an importer exporter. You're a merchant for your own private estate. None your business. Here's my number. Ship it here. Ship to party. Number in lieu of the name and address. You don't need to know the name and address of the party, because the party is the beneficiary. He's protected. Private.
So basically, when they ask us our name, we should just give them our fucking address, because that's how we want to be addressed. That's
right.
Crazy.
In a sense, yes. This is again. I'll have to express it here. If you want to mail me something on the private side from yourself without the postal service, in other words, it goes through the mail. It does not get entered into the mails. These words are very important. So what you do is you address it, Brother Keith, :stop, first line. Care of, semicolon, Joyce, :stop, second line. 1334 Meadow Lane, Apartment D, :stop, third line. Waterloo, Iowa, 50701 in square brackets. The zip code is in square brackets. Fourth line. United States of America, fifth line. Guess what you don't find in there, folks? No agent. There's nobody cognized as first and last name. It is an international foreign address, not domestic to the United States, but cognized through its relevant data elements. No piece of mail that has been addressed that way has failed to meet its destination for me. I have people sending me all kinds of stuff here and there.
Can you show us an example?
Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Stop screen share, present, share, window, this. Okay, you can see that. Oops, nope. I got to do this. There we go. Okay, let me blow this up. Okay, everybody can see that?
Yeah.
So you see Keith, and you can just write Keith. I prefer Brother Keith, and I just put Keith because this is general mailing. People that are businesses and stuff, they don't really need to address me as Brother Keith, but I'll put Keith down there anyway. Keith, full colon, stop. Notice, no last name. Care of Joyce, full colon, stop. Notice, no last name. And then the city or the bonding number, along with the street name, and then it's appendix, apartment D, index, appendix, Waterloo, Iowa. Notice the zip code is in square brackets, and it says United States of America. Just cut one out, tape it on the envelope. So it's 5 lines instead of 3. It's specifically noting United States of America is the one that has this indentured trust. So all of these people are agents. Okay. Federal, state, and municipal officers and agents. And the street is bonded by this number. And here's the name as given by the municipality. And then the particular suite number within another block. And again, this is all no legal. There's nothing legal about this.
You know, I
Any
can't help but to think that we were. I still, after all of this research, I believe we've been sold out in the family bloodline.
I mean, at this point, you can't do nothing but just go and correct it and bring yourself out. The rest of the ones that want to come, they want to come. The rest of them that can't. You can't do nothing about it because it's too many of them and not enough of us that know.
Yeah,
So
it's the let
whatever.
the
Yeah.
fools be fooled. It's the let the fools be fooled thing. Those that want to know, they're going to hook up. They're going to want to know. And this is something
I
I've spoken
just,
about. This is something I've spoken about for 7 years. You know, when you people really want the results and everything, and I show you the results, you're sitting here making fun of me now. But when you want the results, because I can show you the results, and you want to come back to me, then I'm going to be the one laughing in your face. Let the fools be fooled. Those that have been studying along with me and show their earnest, those are the ones we need.
I just reached out to a big funeral home, Combs, Parson, and Collins down in Richmond, Kentucky. So those Collinses in the 1883s, that those family, there was a whole family, and they split up in eastern Kentucky and fought for 11 years. They built their forts and everything right there. And in 1911, the one side left without a leader because he died of tuberculosis. But now the Collins, there was a woman, what was her name? Martha Collins was governor in Kentucky from 83 to 87. You reckon she was put in there for a reason?
And most of them are, you know that.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
El Micah
But I
L
also
says,
know that's under that burial trust as well.
yeah, well, that's why we talk about the death certificate too. You know, death certificate is when that record is going to be reconciled for entrance into the National Archives, where it has to be accurate. They know it's out of balance now. They're waiting for you
Now,
to die so that they can reconcile it, because nobody's reconciling the record while they're alive.
now, one thing I did notice that I don't think a lot of people know that when they establish those estates, they're linked to the Arlington Cemetery in Arlington, Pennsylvania, all through those zip codes. Because
Yeah, yeah, it's a
if you put
military estate.
Is that
right,
the Tribute Archives or something connected to that, Melvin? I think of the
uh,
acronyms TA.
I don't know. You have to sharpen me up on that one. From my research, that when they establish those birth certificates, when they create that estate, all of those are linked through the zip code of their hospital to the Arlington Cemetery, which are basically old Social Security numbers. They just put one dash Instead of 2 dashes, it's just 1 dash. And that's just the first 395156 dash, you know what I'm saying? Whatever the case may be.
And L. Micah L says, oops, I got the wrong one. Care of means trust, according to the IRS. All about trust. Yes, absolutely right. It's expressing a trust because it's showing a transfer through another party. You're saying, literally, you're sending it to Keith, and the transfer is going to be made by Joyce. It's recognizing a transfer agent on the private side. Pure and simple, absolutely.
I mean, see, now that makes sense to me. What they've done is obviously subcontracted us out. We've been.
Yeah, that's
But you look at the
logical
Office
sense.
of Management Budget, OMB. So if we think about it consciously, OMB, well, we just need the contract and of the terms and conditions, and then we need the signature at the end of that OMB that says it was done in good faith and completed. C.O.W.A.R.D.S.
And remember, let me pull this one up. Let me see here if I still got it.
That seems to me the easiest way to balance the books according to that Constitution, which would seem to be if we're all going to work together, we're going to do it in a contracted out mixed benefit system that benefits everybody. No cheating, but somebody seems to have flipped that table and turned that benefit system into a scheme.
Okay, so here,
C.O.W.A.R.D.S.
so here we have the Handbook F101 revision. Now, this is what I was saying earlier when I did the 43 videos on. Oops, looks like we lost Melvin. But I did a series of 43 videos on reconciling the master trust account. And when we pull this up and look at it, it says effective immediately. Oops. Effective immediately. Handbook F101. Field accounting procedures. The accounting procedures. Okay, understand it's an accounting procedure. Is revised with a new procedure for reconciling master trust accounts for Postal One sites. Postal retail units. So as a enterprise payment system account customer, a merchant at the international level, when we do the transfer of title, expenses incidental, we're going to transfer that and establish a retail postal retail unit for that estate. Okay, on Postal One, that are interfaced with Postal One are no longer required to reconcile master trust accounts once a month. Instead, these sites will receive a narrowcast master trust exception report when there's an out of balance status for 3 consecutive days between Postal One and the general ledger. So when we establish that Postal One master trust account for the estate, it ties it to the general ledger. And it is the Postal Service's obligation to reconcile it with the general ledger in 3 days. You are the one then, as the customer of that retail unit, to issue the master trust account narrowcast error report. You're going to notice them. There's an out of balance. It's the postmaster. The postmaster, unit manager, or designated employee must research and resolve the out of balance master trust accounts upon receipt of the narrowcast master trust exception report. So as the customer, you're going to give them a report. Here, I have this utility bill. It's out of balance. Does that make sense, or am I an idiot? Do I sound like an idiot here, guys?
Well, I think it makes sense, Keith. What I don't think makes sense, and it's nothing to do with this, is why have they created a complicated system? Was it to run us all off in the woods trying to figure out what was going on? Because if we get back to scripture in our faith, right? What ought be done shall be done. What is all this garbage? None of it seems to be in good faith, so why I have a hard time going along with it. You know what I mean? From a faith standpoint,
Well, I
because
understand
I
that.
know.
Again, and this is about reconciliation, that Lord's Prayer. Letting the bygones be bygones and not making accusations. 50 U.S.C. 4305B2, in the interest of the United States, for full acquittance and discharge for the person making the same, so that no person shall be held liable in any court.
Mhm.
If you want equity, you must first come with equity. Equity is one post shall run to meet another post. Shewing unto messenger to messenger, shewing unto the king of Babylon that the city has fallen at the other end. This is telling them that the lies no longer stand. And I'm the one bringing it to the attention of the world, posting it. I'm not going to be meek. I'm going to shout it out at the top of the world. Shotgun blast out to the world. The shotgun blast heard around the world. The word of peace, not the word of war. The amnesty oath. Giving notice. They're not supposed to take notice until you give notice. First duty of law is legal notice. Give them legal notice that equity imputes an obligation, or the intent to fulfill an obligation. I see there are certain obligations that I cannot fulfill. There are certain obligations that you cannot fulfill because of the mutual mistakes of my incapacity. I didn't know I wasn't actually an agent for service of process, and it was just merely implied, and I was indoctrinated in all this, and I forgive. I understand you didn't know what you were doing either. You were indoctrinated the same way. I'm repenting and asking for forgiveness so that I'm not led into temptation and led into evil. I'm delivered and receive the prosperity and abundance of the providence of His grace, the power, the kingdom, and the glory. Returned, prodigal son, salvation. You know, when you crash a vessel as a captain, you have ultimate interest in salvage of that vessel, along with the admiral who owns the vessel. Okay? In this sense, God is the admiral. He owns the vessel. You ran it ashore and you injured yourself. You have a salvage process for you for salvation so you can redeem yourself and rise back to the estate, the prodigal son. But only you can do it. No one else can perfect that title in their name because it's not their name. They created a legal construct for the use of it. It's an imperfect usufruct, and you get to perfect the usufruct by putting the title in the right place and establishing your proper capacity in that. Again, it's a postal monopoly as a postal trust, an international postal trust. The labor union
That makes
itself.
sense now. A postal monopoly. Okay.
Yeah,
Because
for
see, I
all
had
things.
some connections. My father on
Russ,
his
real quick.
yeah.
For all things posted to all accounts. That's the mutual mistake. Nobody understands that simple part of it. One post shall run to meet another post. We've been running to meet other posts, not noting that they're holding a post, they're manning a post, and that we're doing the same thing. We have to understand our capacity in manning the post and step up and be the master of the postmaster, equal station in life, dealing with the postmaster, not the administrator, not the president, but the postmaster. He's the international connection. Go ahead.
Well, see, that makes sense because I read something. Anyway, my father's draft card, you know how they used to do those draft cards. And I guess they said they were used for two things. They were not only just used for draft cards, because my father's had an order number on it. And it was that order number that created that executive order for that presidency project in 61. But there was also something to do in there with about bottling and packaging and all of this stuff. And he was in alcohol. He had a bar, had run a bar. The Chitlet, you know, I don't know what the hell the names were, but all of this is starting to add up now. And it goes, I believe it is still family generational though. And there is that postmaster, which is the representative of the family organization, which is the bloodline.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to understand the representation through the grammar and stuff. When you start understanding that the proper grammar style for your name is little, comma, Keith, because the family came first in line, first in time. Okay,
Right.
so first in time is the family, and because you were born of that family gave you a name. Okay, the name is the article that allows one to the inheritance and the legacy. This is why it's supposed to be inspirational, not legal. And when it's inspirational, like I said about the shotgun around the world, it's supposed to be hailed.
You use that word. There's a bridge going from Kentucky to Cincinnati called Combs Hale Bridge.
Right.
And hail means salutations and greetings.
Yep. Heil Hitler. Hail
salutation.
Hitler. Right. And it was a greeting, the diplomatic etiquette in how we address each other. Hail, hark, who goes there?
Mm-hmm. It's a land of milk and honey.
We've forgotten the simple language because we've been indoctrinated into all this other twisted English languages, and nobody knows the different grammar styles and stuff. They don't delve into the language like I was talking about earlier at the beginning of the stream. I've got a book right here. Let me, let's see here. Put me up. Virtual background and none. How Language Works by David Crystal. And as you see under how, it says how babies babble. And then under language it says words change meaning. And then under works it says and languages live or die. But people don't want to learn this. They don't want to comprehend what they're communicating. They just want to run their mouth and think and profess that they know what they're doing. And most of them don't. You know, I've got a friend that I've got many that are dealing with the courts and stuff, and they insist on going to the courts and to the United States. And that's the same thing as the police investigating themselves.
I say you're putting yourself in harm's way.
Well, yeah, and as we saw, if you want reimbursement and stuff, it clearly says it's the Postal Service, and it's a matter of relocation assistance. The relocation assistance isn't a matter of relocating oneself, but relocating a title and an address. You're going to relocate the name and address itself to a private entity known as the Postal Service. It's a private labor organization. Okay? They have it. You have a private contract with them. Contract is the law. They're the ones holding the trust, and in that contract, you're named as the beneficiary of the international trust for the equal considerations and equal benefits. I think it's pretty simple. See, they take upon the benefit of using the roads at their will, without license, without registration, without identification. They have a uniform on, it says Postal Service. Okay, I'll walk around with a uniform on, it says civilian. No name or number needed. Civilian. Should tell them you just ain't supposed to be talking with me, because you're a contracting agent looking for a contract, and you can't contract with me. You have to contract with the estate. I'm the civilian. There's a distinct difference. I'm the living soul. The civilian is the one that represents that living soul, and by that noun, it is not a person. Civilian is expressly clarifying it is not one of the military persons. It's not one of the federal, state, or municipal officers or agents. It's not part of the military. It's not supposed to be recognized as a military combatant under the Trading with the Enemies Act. Uh-oh. Got to think about this stuff, folks. Language is so important. And it changes. Even in the legal forum, it's got different grammar styles according to what jurisdiction they want to shop. Whether it be taxes, probate, administration, family court, child services, education, medical, insurance, contract. I think it's important to understand the process correction starts with you and knowing thyself. Being able to discern the difference between yourself and what the estate is, how it was set up, who's the holder in due course, and who's holding it and why it's in error. See, that record was established, folks, through an enumeration at birth, which is applicable to the Department of Defense. Let's go back and look at this Bureau of Vital Statistics record. Let me show you something. Because while we looked at the birth certificate on that page 7, let's show you page 8 where it shows the death certificate. Let's go over the death certificate a little bit. Okay, here's the current death registration process for a state vital records jurisdiction. Family or informant. Again, informant. Funeral home. And it's the death. It says hospital ED. Enumeration of death. Just like enumeration at birth, this is enumeration of death. Physician or other medical certifier, medical record. The medical record comes to the physician or other medical certifier, the mortician, the coroner. Information goes to the funeral home, the local registrar, and the local registrar again, death certificate sale. So just like we have a birth certificate sale, they sell the death certificate. Same thing. It's a monetization through the state health department. Vital Records Office. Enumerated death record system in the Vital Records system, which is part of the STEVE, which is an interjurisdictional exchange. the data elements that are exchanged, the automated clearinghouse. Here it tells you the different things, CMS Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So let's look over here where it says Federal Benefits Paying Agencies. Federal Benefits Paying Agencies. Federal Benefits Paying Agencies. They're the ones that pay. Okay? Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Department of Defense, and Department of State. Postal Service is the one you would go to for reimbursement because these people ain't paying right. They've been paying themselves.
All right, I think you just solved my little issue. I appreciate that. I get you now. I see where you're coming from now. It's a waste of fucking time. I get you.
You correct the records, and it doesn't matter who's doing what.
Right.
It's an electronic, automated clearing. Guess what? If you've been condemned, then clear your name. Anybody got any questions? Anything that goes against that? Do you have anything that says I'm not being logical or something or anything? I need the criticism if there is any. All right. Well, folks, I was kind of hoping we'd have more intercourse along the way, more interjections and more concepts from different people, but that's all right. I think it still came out as a comprehensive setup for people to start understanding a simple process of correction is a matter of perfection of a title and an imperfect usufruct, wherein that transfer of title is what the correction is, how the correction is applied.
So I have a question. What do you think if one, let's just say somebody may have been left an inheritance or something, or from, say, their father was in the military or whatnot, and maybe you come from a broken home, you know, your father's got you and this family, and then he's got his other family, you know, and if they cheated you or fucked you out of something like that, and if there was any authoritative,
you would bring in your mom and
there,
dad's estate. Then you would bring in your mom and dad's estate, and that's again,
well,
that's why I mentioned
that's just it. They
mother.
they wouldn't let her put my father on my birth certificate back then, and obviously my father's dead now.
Well, you
So
have an inherent ability to state, though, that since it's presumed that my last name is Combs, right? So who is Mr. Combs? Is that my mother's maiden name?
yeah, well, I think it's a little deep. I know what you're saying there.
Do you
But
know
I
who your
think
let me ask you, do you know who your father was?
yes, Milford
Okay.
Russell Manning. He was
Okay.
in World War II. I believe he's responsible for that executive order in '61.
And can you prove it?
I guess by blood, yeah.
Okay. Then in that proof, you would establish that as evidence of his estate upon reasonable logic of any man that they pass their inheritance to their son.
Because if you look at every council meeting or anywhere where they're negotiating any contracts, when they go back to the Manning table, you see what I'm saying?
Well, I'm
That's
talking
why I
about you.
think all of this is
I'm talking. I'm talking.
curses
I'm
in the
ta-
families.
again. I'm not. I don't want to. I don't want to get talking about the corruption. I want to talk about your interest in it, though. Your interest in being able to prove that Manning estate is your father's, then inherently, by reason and logic of any reasonable man, and this is why we have trust law that says this, that the father
Mhm.
passes his estate on to his son. And that's why we're talking about this process as a matter of the prodigal son. Even if the son takes a portion of his estate, goes out and is a spendthrift with it, he has the ability of salvation and going back and regaining his estate. So again, in the reason and logic, just proving that the Manning estate is your father's estate, you have interest in reconciling that estate as well as your own.
Here's my other issue, though. When I was a kid, the only thing I had of my
We
father,
pay for our father's sins.
yeah, but also the best of the father lives on and continues to build and grow on that same foundation.
Right, and that's why the son pays for the father's sins, to make that improvement in that credibility, that credence.
I mean, but I've got some stuff off of what, I looked up, but as far as his military stuff, I don't have none of it no more. That's the only thing I did have, and like I said, I was 6 when he got killed, but you
Right,
know,
and we have to
it is what
understand
it
that.
is. I deep down,
And
I
again,
believe something shady has happened big time.
oh yeah, we all do. And we have to understand in the underlying principle here that regardless of any book, regardless of even a Bible with a family register, a man is bound by his word, and his word, his yea be his yea, and his nay be his nay. So all he has to do is be able to communicate appropriately. This is the diplomatic etiquette to be able to address others. Now, if you need to take time to write it down and use books and stuff, that's fine. But the better you improve it, the less you need those books. It's
Yeah,
like
I
the
don't think
script.
I need books. I don't read
It's
books. I read energy.
it's like the scriptures that I read. I'm not perfect at it yet, and there's a lot more I've got to memorize. But there's most of the scripture that I have memorized. There's going to come a day where I'm not going to need the book. It's like the movie of the guy that apocalyptic world and the book of Ezekiel. Is that it? Where he was a post-apocalyptic world, and he had this book,
Yes,
and
of Eli.
Yes, it is.
the book of Eli, and come to find out, the guy is blind, and the book is written in Braille, so he had to retranslate it to somebody else that could put it in print, so that other people could read. And I don't know why it's not letting guests back in. My apologies. It's I need to maybe downsize my screen so I can see everybody. Now that doesn't help much either, but we'll work with it. Anyway, yeah, it comes down to understanding the concept of know thyself and the story of the prodigal son. We've been indoctrinated into believing that we're somebody we're not. And once we realize that and understand the true sense of the financing in the fact that we're the creditor and not the debtor, then that's what the correction is going to be all about. Yeah, to my credence, I put those data elements in there. So you have to admit, even the bad elements are to my credit. That's how you flip the tables on them. To my credit, I entered the data elements. My mistake. Mutually, you accepted that credence as if those were true. So it is mutual mistake, and you have to forgive them for it because they wouldn't have acted upon it unless you'd have given them that information. Had you given them good information, It wouldn't have been misconstrued. You'd been coming with clean hands, making sure that they understood your capacity, not as the agent of service of process, but as in fact the beneficiary or benefactor to the beneficiary of the postal trust, in which there already is a agent of process or agent for service of process, and that's the United States Postal Service, the registered agent for the trademark holder, in due course, post office, who is the principal. If they're the principal, the grantor, grantee of the postal trust, and the postal service is the registered agent, they're the registered trustee then. That's the agent position. That means you, as the third position, can't be anything but the benefactor. Yes. And this is the presumption that you are a contracting agent. It's all presumption based on the enumeration at birth. Think about it, folks. Upon the enumeration at birth, you, on the assignment of a Social Security number to the individual, it classifies that individual as a Medicare qualified government employee. How can you be a Medicare qualified government employee when you are born? That's the presumption laid on the record, and you are indoctrinated into that presumption. And nobody tells you any different. You cannot be a Medicare qualified government employee at birth. You cannot be a resident unless you have been deemed necessary by the board as a state, federal, or municipal officer or agent.
I can't wait to see these guys running from town.
Well, I don't know if it's so much going to be making them run from town. In my perception, like I explained to a brother earlier, the preemptive trust is an educational trust, folks. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So therefore, the true knowledge that builds those people back up is the true benefit that builds those people back up is the knowledge. That's the true benefit. So that
makes sense too. That makes sense too, because that's an outcome-based education system.
Right, and it's an educational trust with your children and family. See, it's setting thine house in order. If you're going to set your house up in an order where you have a financial trust set up with a bank, I think you failed. I think that trust, that estate trust, that funds everything, that gives credence to everything, should come from your word, and it should truly show your credence. And that credence is the knowledge. The knowledge that you're not a banker and you don't operate as a standalone bank, but you can certainly make a assignment, a durable power of attorney, so that he can take care of his duties and do it by law, and understand my position as third-party benefactor, that he has no right to even request information from. He already has the information he needs through the other lines of identification, without the selective service, without the Social Security, and without the birth certificate, which are not to be used for identification. Yet, if you have an EPS account, you are recognized as a merchant. It is an identification, and you can use a number in lieu of the name and address. Yes, they presume your parents assigned their property, you, to the state. In other words, they presume that your parents assigned their rights in you to the state.
See, that's interesting, that question, or that statement, because I read something to where they were going around, like in the 60s or 70s, they said that Northern Kentucky had to be reminded to hug their children and tell them they love them. And then it showed a kid coming in from like school and asking a question and mom being on the phone. Well, when I saw that, that's way worse now than it was back then. You know what I mean? Everybody's running on a light reel and they got time for nothing.
Yep.
But
And
see, that guardian and conservatorship plays a role in that right there.
yep. And if it's never rebutted, then it operates as an objective fact. Okay. So when you take upon the assignment at 18, you get that Social Security card. Guess what? They send you a Social Security card. Guess what? You become the custodian of that record by evidence. And it's an objective fact. It's an objective fact because you are, in fact, holding it. You are in custody of it. And that implies that you know what you're doing, that you're competent.
Well, possession is 9/10 of the law, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's why I say we got to take these records and surrender them and use them as evidence of our actual standing. Go ahead.
Oh, no, man, I'm sorry. I was just letting you know I'm back. I'm sorry.
So yeah, if it's never rebutted, then it operates as an objective fact, and that's why I say if we take those documents and we surrender them and we get rid of that objective fact by rebutting it and retiring as agent for service of process, because the record reflects that we did in fact objectively operate as the agent of service of process. We continuously accepted the mail at the resident address. Service of process, known as a common carrier.
Mr. Keith, peace and love, everybody. I have a question, if you don't mind. I was just looking
Sure.
it up. I came in a little late. I apologize. You
No,
said
you're
the
fine.
EPS system. Were you talking about the enterprise payment system? Or
Absolutely.
the employee?
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Enterprise Payment System is a postal site, and it is for establishing a business gateway account. And you are going to become the keeper, the gatekeeper. It's a business gateway, and you're the merchant who is going to be able to give the data elements, to grant the data elements. And that grant is a durable power of attorney to the post office to make sure that they establish the general ledger and reconciliation with it when it is out of balance. And any time that you present a coupon from a billing company, your utility company, cable bill, the phone bill, it's an out of balance account that needs to be balanced with the general ledger in accordance to the generally accepted accounting practices of double entry ledgering.
Thank you so much.
I got a question. What do you suggest about the PS Form 61? Because I understand that would officially make us officers of our estates. I could be wrong, but I do know that PS Form 61 is the appointment and oath of office to assume the office of our entity.
Okay, but again, that's a postal service form, and that's not a OMB number. And they're going to ask for your social security number. It says last, first, middle, social security number, appointment for affidavit. It says, please review the Privacy Act statement on the reverse of this form, and then answer and sign items 1 through 13. Complete
Okay.
the bottom section only when instructed to do so. Your answers will be considered together with other information in your record in determining your present fitness for postal employment.
Okay.
You're not here for postal employment. You're here to take up an equal station as a master of your own post.
Okay, I can live with it.
Yeah. If you need to make that kind of a statement, then you would have to be a Postal Service employee, and that's when you would undertake that oath, both to the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union and the Constitution of the United States.
Okay. So basically, we don't need to adopt the Constitution anyway, because that
No,
would put us right back into their, you know what I'm saying, subjective
right,
hand.
right, and
Okay.
this is why I said you can adopt the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, and in that it asserts freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. Then the Constitution of the United States in its preamble says to form a more perfect union. And then
Right.
it talks about our posterity. Okay, so our posterity is to form a more perfect union with the labor union, and that perfect union doesn't mean we have to be an employee. Like I said, it's an express trust. So there are already a principal, agents, and beneficiaries. The agents are already the employees. They're the ones that commit to the service. They're the agents of the service of process already. That's why we have to understand the entrance into the mail rather than having things delivered through the mail. Like I said, that international address format shows that it's delivered through the mails and not entered into the mail, which is legal. The mail is a legal system of posting to accounts, no matter what account it is. So when you go through the mail, it's still a posting and it's still an accounting, but it's no longer illegal and cannot be construed as commercial
Correct.
because there's no legal or commercial expression. There's a labor expression.
And we can get paid for that. Yeah, I got you. My last question, what about we have ancestry to tribal? Will adopting our treaties would, would that be something we probably want to do?
You can, as it goes to the linguistics, again, that peace treaty, that amnesty oath. I personally am going to use the Lord's Prayer, but you can go to ancestral treaties and
Okay.
reiterate the same thing, just like we showed with the proclamation thing, 179 earlier.
Yes, sir.
All you're doing is giving them legal notice that I come in peace. Simple.
I think I can get it done. I probably just, okay. I'm really overthinking because I don't want no mistakes. But you know what? You only live once, and I think you got to knock on that door 3 times, huh?
Yep. Well, see,
Okay.
my inkling is exactly what I was thinking before, except today it changed a slight bit because of the data elements. And my
Right.
comprehension is that you get the estate and you get a P.O. box for the estate at the post office. Okay.
Okay.
But my understanding now through the electronic accounting is that you set those up, and then instead of getting an account at the post office by getting a P.O. box there with the estate name, you use the number. Now,
Hold
all
on.
of
Wait.
your
The state number. Talking about the state file number.
the CRID number, the EPS.
Oh.
When you get an EPS account, it's an international account, and you can now use a number in lieu of the name and address. Now,
Okay. I get what you're saying. That
now,
expatriated it right there. That
now,
transferred.
right now, you can change the address from on the utility company to the CRID number, and they're going to say, "Well, that's not an address." Yes, it is. When you give that to the Postal Service, the Postal Service recognizes its own CRID numbers, and it will take it and address it to that account,
You sure
not
will.
me. They will not address it to me. They will address it to the account.
They ain't gonna have no choice because you're identifying as the CRID number, and that's postal property at that point.
Correct. And that's the merchant account that gives the executive orders for the estate account that is opened up as a master trust account under Postal 1. That's the
Oh,
one that's tied to the general ledger, and it's getting directives from the international side through a private CRID number.
see, now when you say that, that take me back to the Coast Guard, the captain of the Coast Guard, which I think
Not
he recognizes merchant mariners, captains of their vessels.
Yes, mariner insurance and inland marine insurance, and then reinsurance.
The
Let me write,
seers.
let me
Seers.
write that down. Inland marine insurance.
Mariner insurance, it'd be merchant mariner insurance, and then inland marine insurance, and then reinsurance.
Reinsurance. Okay.
And so, as you act as the merchant mariner on the international level, you're the one that has the credence with the post office.
Yeah, basically, yeah, because our credentials and yeah, our
And you
credentials.
are, and you
Yeah,
are who then? And you are
the
who then?
the
The
captain and the master.
the customer.
Right.
You get to customize things because you are the customer.
And now I'm not the custom that's levied.
The custom merchant.
So I would be, I get what you're saying now. So basically we would be converting ourselves from the custom that was levied in the ports. So what you just did basically was you just took the custom and you put the custom and converted it to the customer and a merchant. Now the services that the United States provide, that the judicial officers hold, now they are the custom, and we get to levy them in a sense because we're international at that point.
They're the customs brokers.
Right.
They're the
Okay.
customs. They're the customs brokers. And
So
guess
I
what?
got now wait. You said brokers, so the brokers present things to the bank to cash. So oh shit. So the post office will be presenting our items directly to the
Bureau of
bank to
Fiscal
cash.
Service. The Bureau of Fiscal Services.
Okay, yeah. Cool. You know what? Yeah.
Is that thing?
Yes.
Is that what we were talking about when we were talking about the POS system, and we were talking about the receipts and how it's like translated on the receipt and how it's issued and where that code comes from? But the override is
Yeah.
what you're doing with that, making as the custom, flipping it on the bureau. But when you going into
The
that,
bureau the bureau holds the general ledger
right,
for the government. In
right,
other words, every governor, if they want any federal programs, they have to go through that that window, the tax treasury alone, and the Bureau of Fiscal Services. The Bureau, all of their security bonds comes from the Bureau of Fiscal Services. So that reserve pool, the Bureau of Fiscal Service is the fiscal agent for the federal government, basically, to pool funds from the Federal Reserve. That's through the Bureau of Fiscal Service. The Bureau of Fiscal Service is the authorized fiscal agent besides the Senate that can go to their Federal Reserve. All of your underwriters have to go. You have to have a certificate of authority from the Bureau of Fiscal Services. Your bail bondsmen, they have to have a certificate of authority from the Bureau of Fiscal Services. The Department of Finance for your state has to have a certificate of authority from the Bureau of Fiscal Services.
I had
So
an
all of
agent
you,
from the IRS tell me the other day that payment, essentially all those payments that are accepted or essentially reviewed, they go through the fiscal first in order for them to be dispersed.
The fiscal is basically the underwriter that does all of the stuff we don't do. If you don't approve your items, if you are not signing correctly, then they will do all of that for you and levy your work and labor until you pay them for doing your job. So what he doing is he's going ahead and fixing it from the start. So the officer would just release the money, well, not money, the credit at no protest or performance obligation to you.
Correct.
That's basically what Keith just said.
Because your
So may
performance
Balance in the
I?
is
books.
because your performance is the extension of the credit, and what you put out comes back. Customer agrees to make third-party payment for the estate, paying its debt, so long as the customer, or so long as it's understood that credit is given to the customer's account.
May I?
Go ahead, sister.
Greetings to all. I was reading something in the spiritually I got yesterday, and I was what they're talking about when they're talking about this real estate. Their real estate is going through what is a real estate investment trust. Those real estate investment trusts are tied to open-ended and closed-ended accounts. Now,
Yep.
those accounts that they utilize, they're utilizing those accounts in a vendor vendee transaction through the merchants, because then they're going to open up what is called a nonprofit organization. Then they're going to open up what is called REIT. Then they're going to open up a holding company, and then they're going to open up what is called a parent company, and then all those funds are flowing through all those companies, because that's where they're going to be tax exempt. So in a
Right.
tax
And
exempt, they're go on, brother.
yeah, and see, the Postal Service already has it all set up. They are the principal trust with the REIT. They are the ones, not the United States, but the Postal Service has the Postal Realty Trust Inc. They're the real estate investment trust operator. And of course, they say it's just for postal trust properties, but understand what property means. Remember that bonded number with the municipality? That's postal property. It's
So
using
everything is
it's using their data elements of their trust. Go ahead, sister.
and everything is tied through Title 10 that deals with the armed forces. And those armed forces, they're starting first with the Coast Guard and then the Marines, and it trickles on down. And then that is
They do
tied
that.
into Title 32. With Title 32 is tied into the uh I forgot what Title 32 is tied
32
into,
is
but then
finance. 32 is
right,
Yeah,
finance.
you
finance,
missed. He
right.
missed Title X though. You
Yes,
mixed
but that
Title
is
X.
also,
Yeah,
but that all that is tied into Title 12, which goes into the banking.
he
Yeah.
got to go to Title X first though because he's going through
Right.
the health system. They
So,
got to
but
pull
that's
the credit
also
from
going
their birth certificate.
through Regulation Z. Those titles going through to the Security and Exchange Commission.
Yep. Truth in
Yeah, and the
lending.
first.
Truth in lending. Informed use of credit. The government has no credit without the people. None.
But what I'm reading about is it's tied into the military, because they have the Military
Yes.
Lending Act, where they create all those the information when they're issuing credit cards and anything dealing with credit. It goes through the Military Lending Act, which is attached to the Truth and Lending Act.
Yeah, and what we're finding out, remember the Pony Express? That was first form of postal service.
That was originally Telegram at first. One Telegram.
Well, it was the
Thank.
original. It was the original postal service as we see it today. One post shall run to meet another post, and the Pony Express went from post to post, giving its mail and its messages to the next rider to go to the next post. At each post, they would disperse some mail that went to the local areas. Okay? One post shall run to meet another post. It's not about the name. It's not about the messenger. It's about carrying a message. Like I said, you're already presumed to be a common carrier. What is the message you're going to carry? Is the record reflecting that message? If not, it needs to be corrected. Tell them your message. Make sure it's true and correct. Micah L. asks, Keith, are the county recorder of deeds connected to the Postal Realty Trust? Not yet. That durable power of attorney, 3 birth certificates, 1 to the county register, 1 unauthenticated right back to the Health and Human Services for a collection of all those records at the state level so that it can be transferred. So you got 1 unauthenticated is going to go right back to the Health and Human Services with a letter of intent and letter of acknowledgement of facts and firsthand knowledge, blah, 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 blah. And we'll discuss all this later on after I get it all done. But this is a presentation, and it's going to be to the Health and Human Services. They're the one that established the record. They're the ones that sent you the birth certificate. It needs to be not authenticated any further. It's their instrument. Send it right back to them with a letter of directive and what the oath of amnesty, surrender, and all that. And again, like I said, we'll talk about that later. Then you're going to do one to the county registrar to do the same thing as a matter of correction. Any records they already have, and establish the durable power of attorney so that any future records that go through those state court or through that district court, it will go through them using that CRID number. Okay? Then you're going to have one to the Postal Service. And it's going to be established already through the CRID number at the EPS account, but it's going to get transferred to the Postal Service under a Postal One online account as the master trust account. It's the one that was established through the Health and Human Services. It's a matter of a financial instrument for the government. The general ledger. That's its purpose. We'll hand it right to the Postal Service because they're the ones that are responsible for reconciling the general ledger, and they're also the ones that are responsible for reimbursement for those private takings. And the private takings are done at the county record. That's where they enter in all those records, the tow records, the school records, the hospital records, the military records, the court records, the traffic records, the probate records, the administrative records.
What do you think about in exchange for Treasury white card and a black card?
Okay, my concept, and I don't want to get in on the cards too much. I don't want people getting fanatic about it. This is a matter of process. But when it comes to that part of the process, that's that reconciliation in the transfer of title to the United States Postal Service as a Postal One trust account. And we use the black card until the entire record is corrected. In other words, it's going to take a matter of time. But as a matter of remedy, we are required the use of something for the beneficiary. And it's already set up. That's the black card and the white card. The black card is to clean the record. The white card is once the record is cleaned, you surrender the black card back to them and request a white card.
Yeah, I heard about the white card. They say it was a debit card too. Cause see, I heard the black card was a credit card and the white card is a debit card.
No,
I could be wrong.
they're to be treated. Understand, and I'll pull it up sometime again, but I've already pulled it up before on a postal site. And when it comes to credit cards, MasterCard and Visa cards are to be treated as credit cards. Credit card means any card, plate, coupon, or other credit device used to obtain money, property, labor, or services on credit. So if you can use a credit device to purchase money, would that not be telling you that money is like kind of credit? There is some sort of equal exchange.
Right.
Why does everybody keep chasing the bag then, Melvin?
I was looking at it more like an access card for the estate, like what
Right,
national security
right.
claims. You know what I'm saying?
But everybody else wants money. They think it's important to establish the level of wealth. You know what the level of wealth is if you've got a credence that lasts your entire life?
Unlimited.
Yeah.
Absolutely unlimited.
Yeah.
Hey, I got
Yeah.
a beneficiary. Hey, I got a beneficiary that needs a car. Guess what? The estate pays for the car, not me.
Right. Cause see, I do know if you start taking money off that motherfucker, they will arrest your ass. You just gotta go get what you want. That's from what I've seen. That's a lot that happened with Wesley Snipes. He did the process and he took. They start going to the ATM and going pulling money straight out of it, which is not made to do that. It's just really if you need resources, you go spend it. You know what I'm saying? It's not meant to extract more debt notes and and
Exactly.
and knock the national debt up.
Right.
What they do?
The use of those debt notes and its currency, and they keep track of it. Um,
They do.
is evidence of the debasing of the value system of uh, the national value. I can't say national currency because we don't have a national currency here for America. We have a reserve currency, and that's the Federal Reserve note. We don't have U.S. notes. We have U.S. Treasury securities, but that's not a national currency. You have to be an
So
investor to get those.
so Keith, and everything would have to go to a spendthrift account?
They
That's
have
what
to release.
the Social Security is. It's a
Yeah.
spendthrift.
So when I was working in the 80s under that Workforce Investment Act and that summer program, job JTPA or something, job training, something, something. So I was investing then, wasn't I?
Yeah. Just
Yep,
didn't get reported.
Well, yeah, and
Yep.
exactly.
see, that's just it. You were considered as doing those things in the similar capacity, but it wasn't deemed necessary by the board. It was volunteering. Equity does not aid a volunteer. Therefore, stamps and other representatives of value is telling us that we need to state our value so we can be reimbursed.
Well, that was under federal grants, that,
It
along
doesn't
with
matter.
the Wireless Infrastructure Act.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter unless we recognize our own credence. See, that's the importance that we're trying to get out here is everybody needs to recognize you're not the debtor. Read I don't care if you're a Christian or not. Read King James Version Deuteronomy 15 and understand what it's saying. This is how their system operates. All you have to do is give notice and stand on it. If you want to stand on something and make it stick, it has to be truthful. So learn the truth. Do not believe me. Do not believe the neighbor. Do not believe the government. For crying out loud. Do not believe your mother. She was a fucking informant, didn't know what she was doing. Therefore, study to shew yourself worthy or approved unto God, needing not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Make sure what you
Where'd you say
do.
that was in the Bible?
King James Version, Deuteronomy 15. Read it. It's the Lord's release every 7 years. What do you think bankruptcy is? And when you go forth, They're supposed to give you your necessities, the things that you're supposed to be reimbursed for, the necessities of life. Bankruptcy, again, when you go into bankruptcy, if you've got 3 houses and 17 cars and this and that, they will restrict you down to the necessities, but you still get a nice house, a nice car, a nice internet connection, a nice phone line, a nice everything that every other common man has access to as a matter of modern conveniences of the of necessity of life. And remember, folks, phone is a matter of mayday, mayday, mayday. Your ability in the First Amendment, freedom of expression, the expression of emergency to let the world know that, hey, the house is on fire.
That's basically like when Superman always ran in that booth, that phone booth, and changed his clothes, and when Batman ran in them booths and changed their clothes. Same thing with Neo in the Matrix. He had to go to their special phone to phone in and let them know what he needed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And folks,
Gotcha.
understand. I told you earlier in your video on Facebook to look up safe harbor. Understand what safe harbor is, folks. Safe harbor, according to the federal legislation, is merely exemptions against being prosecuted for anti-kickback laws, because there are certain situations, as we find in this situation, where the common man is indoctrinated into being agent for service of process, and now he's not asking for kickback, but because it was offered as a kickback for acting as such. In any normal contract, it's an expectation that since he did perform, he is now due just consideration of equal benefit. Contract is the law.
That makes sense. I had a guy working for me one time, and the accountant told me that I had to get his information, and he kept putting me off and putting me off and putting me off, and finally he just said he didn't have it. And I said, well, I got to talk to the accountant. And the next thing I know, labor board's calling me. And then I said, well, talk to the accountant. We're not going to pay him. We figured he was an illegal alien or something. And they said it didn't matter. The man worked. You had to pay him.
Yep.
It makes sense.
El Micah L says, how so, Brother Tribe, in response to Brother Tribe's exemptions for necessary essentials? Right. That's what I just stated. And so he says, how so, brother? Essentials are bare necessities, being rights of life. And as a matter of this society, as a matter of rights of life, the necessities, the house, the car, all those things, those have exemptions from the commercial and legal aspects because they are necessities of life. You cannot charge a man for a house.
Is that with the consumer exemption 390? Where you apply that to the normal transactions?
No, it's I don't know anything about that. I'm referring again to the fact that we are the creditors to everything. You can't charge the creditor. He's the one extending the credit to you. So if I'm the one extending the credit to the bank for the purchase of that home, effectively what I am doing is allowing them to act as the agent under law and do the proper transfer to the beneficiary.
Yeah, right.
They're presuming that they're transferring property to another agent. That's the exemption. I'm not an agent. I'm not a receiver of process of transfer. I'm a receiver of the benefit as the effect of the transfer. The final destination, end of the mile, or end of the line, last mile. Ship to party. The party is not a contracting party. It is the beneficiary.
So it's apples and oranges at that point.
Say that again.
Apples and oranges at that the way they're looking at it on the inside. It's apples and oranges, but they're actually saying you're the agent because they
Yeah.
benefit from it.
Yes.
And they're not comparing apples to apples.
Correct.
Well, see, just like you mentioned, Brother Keith, even when you look at the T ledger, if the right hand side is the liability side and we're extending the credit, and the left hand side is the debit, the debit side, that is the side that has all the assets that are being held, but they're not being distributed.
Correct.
They're being held for future deposits, where even if you say a deposit or you send something, that's a deposit, but it's being held for a future distribution.
Correct. So you have to direct that future distribution under 12 USC 1813. Deposit means the unpaid balance of money or its equivalent. If you can use a credit device to purchase money, then credit itself is the equivalent. And it goes on to say, deposited in a financial institution wherein that financial institution is obligated to give credit or is already given credit. So if they haven't given credit yet and they've only received it, then they have to give credit. What he puts out comes back. So the directive is customer agrees to make third-party payment so long as it's understood that credit is given to the customer's account. I, Keith, am paying for the debt of the estate of Keith Orland Little, so long as it's understood that credit is given to my account. They're receiving the debit. It goes on their books as a credit. This is the double entry ledgering. This is why I say if the reimbursement comes from the Postal Service and they're the ones that are supposed to reconcile the master trust account with the general ledger, then it would seem to me, by reason of logic, they're the ones that are supposed to do the ledgering. Everybody else is doing the accounting. They're putting it on the account. They're not doing the ledgering.
The ledgering, now this is what I understand from talking to financial advisors. I've been talking to a few financial advisors of some banks. And they basically explained it that they start off everything with the ledger.
Yeah. They prepare the ledger with the prenatal record. The doctor is giving the hospital information. When that woman goes into labor, she's entered into the registration at the hospital under inpatient hospital treatment, which is defined as a spell of illness, which includes the first day. Then the baby is born, which includes the first day of its life of inpatient hospital treatment. So it is literally born in a spell of illness as it's defined, but mom's not there as a matter of spell of illness. She's there as a matter of nature. Bearing labor, bearing her young. It's a natural process. It's not a spell of illness. She's not sick. She gets morning sickness, but it's not a spell of illness. That's a natural body reaction because of the hormone balances and stuff going all haywire. So again, it's a matter of correcting that record at any point in time. Personal jurisdiction can be questioned at any time, even before the person is born. Imagine that. How come everybody wants to wait until it hits to the courtroom to question personal jurisdiction? Why isn't that questioned before it's even established?
You know, I will say I believe that's what's kept me out of that cage. It's been what, 5, 6 years now?
Since what?
I said, I believe questioning that jurisdiction in the beginning like that is what's kept me out of the cage.
Oh, for yourself, yeah.
Yeah, because they
I
slipped
think,
and let me put that on the record before they knew what was going on.
yeah, I think a large part of that has to do with mine as well. You know, been 9 years. They filed a protection order against me when I filed a certain document, and that was before the case was even over. And then they turned around and renewed that protection order 4 more years. They have a total of 5 years they can follow up on protection orders, and that's exactly what they did. But in the meantime, after they filed the protection order, we continued on with trial and everything. And then on sentencing day, I handed in certain documents, one of which was the birth certificate that they still have in evidence, because that's where I told them to put it. I want it filed in evidence. Okay? Understand, I've been on this track a long time. That birth certificate is evidence. So put it where it belongs, in evidence. It is not a security. It is not a financial instrument. It is nothing else but evidence. Greetings, Pamela Boss. Sorry I did not see you in the background there. I don't know how long you're waiting, but my apologies.
Greetings.
So
And
then,
so,
Brother Keith, the question that I have, then that would mean the driver's license, the social security card, any certificated document would be considered evidence as well.
correct. And that's why I say we're going to gather up all the evidence that we put out in our lifetime through all of those different applications and everything. Now that would be your job applications. That would be your job applications, your applications to the emergency room, applications to be signed in the hospital, schools, student loans, bank loans, anything that you signed your name on. All of those records are a matter of an accounting that you gave them of the events, the recording thereof, which implies something other than the truth. In other words, those data elements were taken and put into those records, and a presumption, again, at the state level of a resident, federal, state, or municipal officer or agent, when that wasn't so. In effect, what you did was you placed a liability on the public record without knowing so. And that's known as an accident, a mutual mistake. Hey, I accidentally told you I was a resident without knowing it. Please forgive me. I repent. I'll never claim to be a resident again. Because as I understand it, a resident by the federal statute means I am a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence was deemed necessary by the board. And for the state determination, it's for federal, it's for income tax purposes. Now, income tax purposes means I have to be an investor into bonds. In other words, I have to be buying shreds of bonds. I have to be buying a portion of a bond. I have to be investing in that bond as a investor of a pool of investors, and that bond that I'm investing in might be a pooled investment bond itself. In other words, the courts, they take all those people that run through the courts every day and they pool them all up into one bond at a certain point, whether it be once a week or once a month or once a day, depending how busy the courts are, how much they're pulling in. There's a certain value that they can turn to then pool it and invest it as a bond in their name. So they take all the names of all the investors in those court proceedings, such as the defendants. They're the ones that are presumed as the investors. So they take all those, and those are those bonds created in the defendant's name, as if the court has personal jurisdiction. Well, the Health and Human Services is the one that established the vital statistics jurisdiction for the state in which the creation of that person first emerged, then they are the one that holds personal jurisdiction of that person. And so when you order a birth certificate from them, now you are a holder of that person. You do have personal jurisdiction. And if the court wants personal jurisdiction, they can give you a waiver of personal jurisdiction. And when they give you that waiver of personal jurisdiction, you can surrender the person for them to jurisdict. Ain't got nothing to do with me. I was just agent of service of process. Here's the person. You can't hold it against me because you're the holder in due course. Now enforce the law. You can't enforce it against me. You have to enforce it against the estate. And make sure you understand that that's my estate in fact. And if you're going to take my credence, you have to give it back. Equal consideration contracts the law. Right, brother? So anyway, I think that's about enough for me tonight. Like I said, this is the way I'm going to be moving forward. I go down tomorrow to get that selective service form and everything printed up so I can start working on that. I've got the 3 birth certificates. I'm going to print up some of those durable powers of attorney, go get a P.O. box. I've got the EPS thing I'm going to set up tonight. And then we can work on the transfer of the title to establish a Postal 1 account tied to the general ledger where it's supposed to be so that all of those records can then be reconciled. Any questions? Anything else on the way out the door, guys? Ladies, gentlemen.
Nah, I probably want to link up with Miss Pam Davis.
You got two. Hold. You got two devices going.
Yeah, sorry, it's probably mine. I did have one last question. I know you guys are wanting to get off. But it was about the black and white cards and the bare necessities. Like, I feel like these entities are they're claiming well over bare necessities for themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but remember, if it's coming from the estate that you have the right to perfect the title, that's what we're doing here, is we're perfecting the title. And in the perfection of the title, it's clarifying that we are the beneficiary and the estate pays for the beneficiary's needs. So if you think you need your nails done because you're going to a gala event and you need to look good, guess what? You're not an agent. You're still the beneficiary.
Okay, I see. Because I when you were explaining it, I was like, okay, well, how do we get like regular daily stuff? You know what I mean, like diapers or
same way.
You know,
it's the same way. You're just going to learn how to give directive through the Postal Service that, hey, the beneficiary needs some diapers. Well, that's what the card's going to do. It's going to establish that, hey, there's already credits there. So when we make it a charge on the general ledger, then we have to exempt it through the estate or discharge it or set it off or offset it, something, whatever that process is internally. And I explained it to you this way. I've got a neighbor that goes out to the parking lot. He gets in his car and he tries to start it up and it won't start. So I take my battery charger out. I hook it up to his car and I charge up his car and it starts up and he can drive off. He has currency in his car now to run as long as whatever he needs or until it breaks down again. He can come back to me again and ask me to charge up his car. This is what the government's doing. They're asking you to charge up the account. You just don't recognize that you're supposed to get your charger back and that's all you're doing is charging up the account. You're already the creditor. They're asking you to extend credit. Extend the credit.
Okay, I got it. That's beautiful.
Holy cow. Okay, Iman Bey, go ahead.
So basically, all the directives will have to be going through the director. You'll have to be giving him instructions in order what to do the set-offs in order for the books to be balanced, right?
Yeah, that's that master trust account. When we establish the correction and transfer of title, the transfer of title is going to end up putting that estate and those data elements in the Postal One account. That's where the estate trust account, that's going to be the master trust account. It's tied directly to the general ledger. So when we do the expenses incidental to transfer of title to the agency and then to the United States and then to the Postal Service, they're all going to do their parts in gathering and assembling the records so that they can be reconciled at each and every point. So that when it reaches the Postal Service, it can now be reconciled with the general ledger. Because in the United States, when the transfer of title goes to the United States, they're not going to show any records except federal taxes. And that's going to be the Social Security stuff. Okay? So the federal taxes, that's just going to affect your reimbursement for the taxes that you paid in that you weren't required to because you weren't the agent. You weren't supposed to be withholding taxes. It's a non-taxable estate. It should have never been entered into the commercial realm as if though it were. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
It does make sense. Ooh, it does make
Yeah.
sense. So basically, in these courts, what information that's being concealed in the courtrooms are all the financial data that's being utilized when they utilize these securities through the bonding system.
Right. And see, these administrators are not holders in due process. The whole or holder in due course. They're providing a supposed due process, but we have to understand the difference between due process and holder in due course. The holder in due course is the one with the rights to enforce the law, not the judge. Well, if the holder in due course is the registered agent who's supposed to enforce that law, and he's the one that says both reconciling the general ledger and reimbursements, I think again that that's the one that is supposed to have the record. So I'm not the holder in due course. I happen to be a holder, and as a representative, an authorized representative, I am going to surrender it with an appointment to the post office for them to reconcile the trust account.
And that's through
One,
the EPS.
the EPS is the merchant account to establish the identification through a number. The reconciliation is going to happen on the other side, which is the Postal One trust account. There's an EPS account and a Postal One trust account. When you look at the Postal One trust account, you'll see it comes up under the Treasury. It's tied in. It's the one that's tied in with the Treasury. So that's where we see the durable power of attorney, in fact, from the Bureau of Fiscal Services.
So, Brother Keith, so does that mean everything is going through an authorization process?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. I do know it's double entry ledgering, accrual process, accrual accounting, so that everything that you've put into those accounts is accrued over the years. And when you do the correction, everything that's got a credit value in there should come back to you through the reconciliation, automatically establishing funds that are already there. Credit of account. Rebecca says money of account. Again, remember the deposit definition. The unpaid balance of money or its equivalent. What's the unpaid balance? It's the debt. So the unpaid balance of the estate, and you're going to pay for it by extending credit. You're paying the debt of the estate, which is money of account, with credit of account. It's a fiat money based record. You are a credence based spirit, which has merits according to your actions. Michael Keith Larson, Ab Aramo, says, what kind of correction is it theoretically? Theoretically, the first correction is your own. Know thyself. Then, in knowing thyself and distinguishing yourself from the person and understanding the error in person, and this is why he's a respecter of no persons, in that it's an imperfect usufruct where the state created that person when you were born, rather than you becoming age of majority and creating your own personality to go out upon the world, creating your own public name like Samuel Clemens did, Mark Twain. So he could tell the world his stories through Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. Samuel Clemens, first person. Mark Twain, second person. Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, Aunt May and all the other characters, third person. And they've got everybody indoctrinated into acting as if they're the third person civil rights contractor. And then, if they figure that out, they might still be confused under the constitutional liberties, where they're still militarily occupied and only at liberty to do as they will upon leave of that military. And if they figure that out, then they might know thyself in the freedom to express their free will as the will of God. This is a faithful saying, that I will that thou constantly affirm, that he who believed in God be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable unto man. And remember, folks, while equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation, it also means that you must first come with clean hands. Titus 3:8.
And see, Keith, what was so good about that is that earlier on, that Mark Twain, the story about Huckleberry Finn and Samuel Clemens, at one time it was a required reading, and that required reading was of the students if you were taking literature arts. And then they removed all that out of the educational system. But if anybody gets, because, and I had an opportunity, I had that book literally in my hand about 2 months ago, and something happened. I didn't get the opportunity to get it, but that's where literally, as you're talking about, you can understand the application and the style of writing with the different names
Right,
in as author, in authorship.
right. And Pamela Boss, I see in the background it says your device is not connected. If you want to try, I kicked you from the studio, so if you want to try to come back up, I'll let you try to come back up. But we're on the way of closing out, so hopefully you can make it up. If not, we're gonna try to do another one of these next week. So in the meantime, anybody else got anything on the way out? Going once, going twice. Say something if you want to.
I'm
All
just
right.
gonna remind everybody to be the change they wish to see. I'm gonna be the first one out.
Awesome. Appreciate
Appreciate
it,
it,
brother.
Keith.
Yep.
Yeah,
Always
it's
always
always
a
a
good
pleasure.
word. Yep. Always a good word. Acts speak louder than words. So if you want people to understand what you're saying, you have to do what you feel you want from others. Be the change. If you want change in others, you've got to be the change yourself. Absolutely agree. Anybody else?
Just wishing everybody a peace, love, and light moving forward. May all receive all they wish coming to them and proceed in accordance. Many blessings and strong days.
Absolutely. I am Seth 888. Greatly appreciate it. All right. Well, with that, oh, go ahead, I-Man.
The only thing I want to say is that we are the ones coming together to make the change for the way it is supposed to be. That's it. I land my plane.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And in that, guys, I want to thank everybody. You guys know me. I love you. But I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That part's on you. So may God bless you and have a good day. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe button. There is a PayPal link down below, so if you want to share some love, please feel free. Every little bit is appreciated. And at this point in time, since the records are not correct, I am still a bitch-ass slave to that fiat currency here and there. So, again, every little bit counts. And again, I love you and be blessed.